Gentle viewers and gentlemen viewers, near or far, wherever you are, welcome to this episode of the series Shakespeare's Views on the News, titled To Lie or Not to Lie, which, this title is also an arbitrary adaptation of one famous quote, and often the only one known by those for whom Shakespeare is a little more than a name of no particular consequence. But on this arbitrary and unwarranted modification, namely to lie or not to lie, instead of to be or not to be, I will return later as far as the relevance to this episode is concerned. For the first-time visitors, Shakespeare's Views on the News is but an attempt at interpreting some current events, arbitrarily chosen, and as the title of the series implies, interpreting them from a Shakespearean point of view, or rather, more modestly stated, to associate the characteristic of a specific event with to one or more befitting and applicable Shakespearean quotations. An effort that to some may appear an exercise in remarkable uselessness, perhaps even bordering with a mild form of innocent madness. Mad I call it, for to be fine true madness, what is it, but to be nothing else but mad, as the character Polonius declares, while delivering his own diagnosis on Hamlet's peculiar but objectively justified Hamlet's state of mind, delivering this statement, his opinion, to the King and Queen of Denmark. As it may perhaps be self-evident, but to confirm it, I am no Shakespearean authority, wizard, scholar, teacher, instructor, specialist, guru, professor, godfather, or similar. In fact, to those who consider themselves the anointed authority on this subject, I am but a poor mechanical who works for bread upon the Athenian walls. That comes from Midsummer's Night's Dream, by the way. Nor I ride the pomp that beats upon the high shores of the world, as King Henry V meditates during the night before the Battle of Agincourt. Now, examining even cursorily the main events that represent a kind of virtual signature of the last few weeks or month, there is more material to choose from than time is allowed for. Therefore, I feel somewhat like King Claudius in Hamlet, who, unable to choose which decision to take next, says, "And like a man to double business bound, I stand in pause where I shall first begin, and both neglect." However, given the current real-life characters involved in some of the events that recently floated to the surface of time, there is enough evidence as to cause one or more to ask oneself with Hamlet, what is this quintessence of dust? Man delights not me, nor woman either, though by your smiling you may seem to say so. As it can be explained by those who follow the tide of time and of history, Donald Trump and some characters in his entourage, irrespective of one's own personal opinion or of value judgment, continue to capture the attention of the media and, consequently, the attention of the crowd. I'm quite certain that, as with some former presidents who took some significant liberty with the truth as well as with language, a book may be printed titled Trumpisms, and who knows, it may come out quite soon, perhaps. One of the first instances of extraordinary statements recently pronounced by Trump is the following, meaningful in itself and remarkable for the choreography of where and when it was produced. That is, answering questions from journalists on a plane. And I am not raising a criticism, just making an observation from which viewers may draw their own observations or judgment. A journalist asked the president if he plans to speak with Putin in the near future. Putin said he would, and followed up by saying that I settled 7 wars.
For you. First, after your phone call with Ukrainian President Zelensky today, do you plan to speak with Russia's President Putin in the near future?
What?
If you will speak with President Putin in the near future.
I will be, yeah, I will be. We're having a very good dialogue. I settled 7 wars.
The untutored and punctilious, perhaps even pedantic observer may ask himself instinctively some questions. For example, what the 7 wars had or have to do with meeting with Putin, or what relevance they have in that context. And lastly, it is possible that the audience may have an iron memory and remember which were the wars thus far settled by the president, though it is doubtful that they have. Yet, the vile multitude that choose by show may still be interested in knowing which were those 4 wars. However, a quick online search shows that the wars actually settled by Trump were not 4 but 8, in which case his response to an unanswered question about having settled for wars rather than 8 could be considered an act of modesty, which is certainly not the case with one Shakespearean character in the play All's Well That Ends Well, a character who likes to make exaggerated claims throughout the play. But at the end, he is discovered for what he was suspected to be, and concludes with a telling statement, "For it will come to pass that every braggart shall be found an ass." I hope I'm not misunderstood, and if the president settled either 4 or 8 wars, good for him. I'm only speculating that it would be helpful for his followers to know the name of those wars along with their actual numbers. Still, a viewer sent me this clip, which, at least from the appearance of the president, seems to be relatively recent. There is nothing wrong with this video, and anyone can have his own perspective as to the inherent rights of people who are more powerful than all others. Personally, I think I particularly like the pronouncement of Mark Twain on this subject. In all matters of opinion, our adversaries are insane. Therefore, I will present the short recorded sketch here, while, for what is worth, I leave it entirely to my 25 viewers to form their own opinions.
And you say, and again, this has become very famous in this video, I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. Just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the... You can do anything. That's what you said, correct?
Well, historically, that's true with stars.
It's true with stars that they can grab women by the...
Well, if you look over the last million years, I guess that's been largely true. Not always, but largely true. Unfortunately or fortunately.
And you consider yourself to be a star?
I think you can say that, yeah.
But continuing with glimpses on recent or current events, in this instance, the Epstein files, as we know, the volume of the literally millions of documents discovered, documents for the most part redacted or only in part produced for the benefit or the unbenefit of the average citizen, some of these documents have become the source of dispute or analysis or interrogation at various political levels. Far from me to delve into a subject too well known or debated for its sordidness or for its relevance to the current political or historical moment. Many dialogues, starting from the dialogues of Plato down to the very short dialogue I will show next, are worth the proverbial 1,000 words. In the clip, the animated and feisty Attorney General of the United States is asked a question from a senator attending the session. I do not remember what the question was. I think it had probably to do with the Epstein files or with the associated censorship or something like that. What is, in my view, both interesting and telling more than the question is the Attorney General's answer, which, the answer, I mean, is equally a splendid example of how to ask a question that will not be answered or to answer a question that has never been asked.
How ironic is that? You know why? Because Donald Trump, the Dow right now is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records.
I feel I would offend the viewers by suggesting a relevant or related conclusion of the episode portrayed in this short sketch, a conclusion that I'm sure the viewers will draw by themselves. Another event that was partially overwhelmed by, at least noticed by the impact of the Epstein saga, was the launch of the movie Melania, the impressive biography and the epic narrative and life history of the current First Lady of the United States. A movie that, according to official information, involved a production expense and a compounded investment of $75 million. Apparently, the attendance by moviegoers was not very spectacular, and that is a euphemism. But what was interesting, at least from the anecdotal point of view, were some of the correlated materials related to the event. For example, this poster explaining why supporting this film is important, a story that was talked about but never told, judge without being understood, and reduce with the deserved depth. A sentence, in my view, with a ring of an oration in the Roman Forum of old. Furthermore, supporting this film is about standing up for grace over noise, dignity over distortion, and for the truth. And one remarkable and extraordinary promoter of the movie was this unimpeachable lady in this picture, who is a pastor and director of the NAFB, the National Faith Advisory Board. Of course, we all know that religion as a whole has undergone dramatic changes and evolution during the last 50 years or whereabouts. From the narrative promoting the movie, it is unclear if this lady is a priestess or a supervisor of priests or something in between. And physiognomists, that is, those who derive the character of a person from the expression, may find it somewhat puzzling that this fine lady should be a priest. But, as the saying goes, who are we to judge? Still, as far as my shallow understanding is concerned, I am tempted to declare that if this lady is a priest, then I am a Himalayan Buddhist monk. Another interesting feature of the movie celebrating Melania's life are the credentials of the movie director. An individual who had been expelled from Hollywood for corruption and immorality. A side note, one may say, yet not without its interest, for a movie director who has been expelled from Hollywood for immorality, in my view, equates to a thief being expelled from a den of thieves for larceny. Yet there is another recent interesting episode involving Melania. As by now all, or at least most of the world well knows, Melania moved to the US, the United States, on the basis of a so-called Einstein visa. The characterization is self-evident. The holder of an Einstein visa is a genius or a world champion or similar. Melania's documents show that she got a university degree in design and architecture from the University of Ljubljana in Slovenia, a fine city with an established university, which I happened to visit in the course of my previous life as an engineer, to present to the local university, a new product and technology developed by my then employer here in Oregon. Melania's degree in architecture may not be a big deal in itself, but the fact that she didn't get that degree or any degree is, I think, meaningful. Or rather, Melania attended 2 university exams connected with the first year of architecture, both exams that she failed, whereupon Melania left the university for the more lucrative profession of modeling, including, in some instances, featuring the attire originally worn by Adam and Eve during their initial stage in the earthly paradise, that is, none. We know that perfection is not of this world. What can be avoided has been purposed by the mighty gods, says Julius Caesar with an air of resignation in the specific play. But misrepresenting, which is a euphemism for lying, misrepresenting one's qualification on a legal entry document to another country is not, I think, something to be too much proud of. At least some, or maybe just a few of us, would think so. In the play As You Like It, the character Touchstone lists 7 degrees of lying, each with its own characteristics. First, the retort courteous, the second, the quip modest, the third, the reply churlish, the fourth, the reproof valiant, the fifth, the countercheck quarrelsome, the sixth, the lie with the circumstance, and the seventh, the lie direct. In the instance of Melania's qualifications, as far as the 7 degrees of lying are concerned, we deal with the 7th degree of lying, namely the Shakespearean lie direct. Perhaps an applicable quote could be, with minor modifications, the answer that a character gives to Cleopatra when she asks him to tell a lie. I had rather seal my lips than, to my peril, speak that which is not. In the case of the Einstein visa, it seems that the ex-student in architecture had not significant reservation about speaking that which is not. According to the extant visa and nationality application, Melania, as mentioned, studied architecture in the University of Slovenia, which was true, and got a degree, which is false. And if we follow the categorization of lies described in the Shakespearean play, I just mentioned the questionable information on the visa that corresponds to the lie with circumstance. Yet, there is another recent event of no dramatic and yet of significant importance concerning the current First Lady. As most of this audience may know, Melania threatened to sue for $1 billion, 1 billion, 1,000 millions, to sue writer Michael Wolff for him having stated that Melania was originally connected with the human symbol of contemporary political society and habits thereof, ironic of course, namely Jeffrey Epstein. The idea being, without much need of demonstration, that the threat of paying $1 billion in damages to Melania for having lied would deter even the most audacious and intrepid party from defending the suit. But, as many by now may know, Michael Wolff reacted by carrying out a cunning plan, namely of suing Melania before Melania sued him, and therefore put her threat into practice. Why? Because the move neither Melania nor her lawyers had anticipated, which, at least up to the time when I recorded this program, helped to convert the episode into almost the equivalent of an actual cartoon. Now, in the sharp quillets of the law, I am no wiser than a daw, says the nobleman Winchester in Henry VI, Part 1. However, it seems that unless a legal suit is officially delivered to the defendant, and or unless the defendant accepts the related summons, the suit cannot proceed. Now, common sense would suggest that if a defendant can escape a trial by refusing to accept the associated summons, then a wide range of possibilities opens up to proverbially make an ass of the law. And in America, where tragedy and comedy are frequently not far away from each other, The defendant, Melania, is skipping from place to place, from resident to resident, so as to avoid accepting the summons. In this event, what I think is interesting, or perhaps amusing, unbelievable, and in the end, I would say almost tragic, is the ease, the nonchalance, the impertinence, the impudence, the insolence, and in the end, the lack of any scruple or of a minimum of decency involved in refusing to confront justice, or in attempting to refuse justice via an exercise in ridicule. Also considering that Melania, at the time when she denied having anything to do with Epstein and asking $1 billion from Michael Wolff as punishment for having said otherwise, Melania maintained the friendliest and most familiar connections with the Epstein clan, specifically with Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's effective alter ego, his executive mirror image and partner in crimes. And this familiarity between the ladies is abundantly evident from the following correspondence. In one of the messages, Melania says, "Dear Ghislaine," note the familiarity, "how are you? Nice story about J.E., that is Jeffrey Epstein." Again, same familiarity. In the New York magazine, "You look great in the picture. I know you're very busy flying all over the world. How was Palm Beach? I cannot wait to go down. Give me a call when you're back in New York. Have a great time. Love, Melania." And Ghislaine replies to Melania, "Sweet pea, once more," observe the mutual endearment, "thanks for your message. Actually, plans have changed. I am now on my way back to New York. I leave again on Friday, so I still do not think I have time to see you, sadly. I will try and call, though. Keep well, Ghislaine." If we consider that Melania expected to cash $1 billion from Michael Wolff because he told the truth about her connection with Epstein, and we know her pictures with Epstein and his correspondence with Ghislaine, the rest of us, the useless and the inconsequential, can only say, "Melania, where is thy blush?" And the image with which this episode ends perhaps best exemplifies the degradation of the sense of nobility in the instance and at large. And here, a frankly despicable individual, a friend of Epstein, and until recently a prince, when this picture was taken, it is, though now he is not one any longer. For which image, perhaps one suitable comment should come from Oscar Wilde. I believe anything, provided it is quite incredible. But the image is authentic. It represents a human being turned into the caricature of a particularly unworthy animal. A true, recurrent and classic case when a picture is worth 1,000 words. In the instance, perhaps, the most appropriate Shakespearean line could be derived from Hamlet, and given that Ghislaine was a suitable complement to Epstein and partner in the whole enterprise of hell, we may repeat again a famous line with only minor modifications to the original in Hamlet. "Man delights not me, nor woman neither, though by their smiling," meaning Epstein and Maxwell, some may think it to be an exaggeration. For the rest of us, we who have not ended 8 wars, who do not own 1 or more harems, who cannot annex other countries at the strike of a pen, the nod of a head, or the touch of a button, the only remaining thing we can do, in a manner derived from a character in the play The Tempest, is to resign to the inevitable, bury principles, laws, and elemental shame, and deeper than did ever plummet sound, drown the book of what once was called common decency. Thank you for watching. See you next time. And as always, may all the number of the stars give light to your fair way.